My guest in this episode is a very special human. Her name is Jenny Danaher. She has deep experience and understanding with grief and loss, and also an incredible story of journeying through to hope and healing. She founded Grief to Joy Coaching, and the conversation is transformational. So I encourage you to sit back and listen to the story. Welcome, welcome. Thanks for joining us for another episode of Your Life Simplified. I'm very excited for today's episode because we have an external guest, and she's a very special guest. Her name is Jenny Danaher. She is the mother of two adult children. She's a retired teacher, and she's the founder of Grief to Joy Coaching. She has an incredible story of grief and loss, but also overcoming that and coming to a place of hope and joy. She has a gift of sharing that joy with other people and just the journey with other people. And I hope that you are as excited about this conversation as I am. Welcome, Jenny. Thanks for joining us.
Thanks for having me, Whitney.
Yes. How are you today?
I'm great.
So we have a lot to cover, but I actually like to get started with something that's more of a softball question. And are you reading or watching anything of note?
I'm reading a book called The Villa. So it's just a suspense novel.
Fiction?
Fiction.
Love it.
Absolutely.
Would you recommend it?
I would. This is my second book by the same author. The first one's called The Wife Upstairs.
Okay, excellent. I always like a good, fiction story because a lot of what I read is nonfiction. So, okay, getting into the more nitty gritty, deeper conversation. I had the opportunity to meet you just not even a year ago, I guess. And it feels like I've known you for decades now. I don't know if you feel the same way, but I just feel very close to you. I think you have a gift of letting people in and letting people share their whole selves. But I really just kind of want to start with your story. Like, what's your story, and how did you get so involved in a grief journey and sharing that with other people?
So grief has just kind of been something that started when I was 21. I lost my only sibling to suicide and was student teaching at the time and a couple of weeks away from graduating at K-State. And my mom and dad and I found my brother. So very traumatic, not just a typical, loss of a grandparent. And in that moment, it was just life altering. And yet I knew that I needed to still have a good life and show my parents that life could go on. And it was just kind of instinctive in me that that was how I was going to face the grief and the loss. I also, as an educator, have always felt the need to teach people. And he didn't give me the opportunity to help him. And so I started speaking at local high schools on suicide prevention.
When you were 21?
Yes, from the angle of what it does to those people left behind. And that was really part of my healing. So for me, all along, helping has been part of my healing. That happened and it was awful and traumatic. And I thought, this will be the worst thing that happens. And then at 43, my husband had an accident. Our family was traveling to North Carolina for a beach trip, and he stayed back for a work deadline and ended up falling, cleaning the gutters at our home, and suffered a traumatic brain injury. So I was 43. My kids were 10 and 13, and we were 20 hours away. We'd driven to North Carolina to be with his family, and he stayed behind for work. So I received a call from the Overland Park Police Department asking me if I was the wife of Doug Danaher, and my heart sunk because I knew how life-altering this would be for my kids. And I remember some of the first words out of my mouth, and I say this now because of where I've come, but his sister was there with me. We'd traveled there with our kids, and she was the first person I spoke to when I got off the phone. His mom was there with me, his aunts, cousins, everyone. And I took
His
her.
entire family was with you.
Yes, and he stayed to complete a work deadline. So that to me is also a cautionary tale that I'll touch on at some point.
Yes.
Because if he'd been with us, who knows? But the first words out of my mouth once I got his sister aside, I didn't want to alarm my kids right away. I got off the phone and told her what I'd learned, and she was a nurse. And I said to her, "This family doesn't work without him." And I say that now because I can tell you almost 12 years later that this family does work without him. And we've come a long way since that happened. But it just felt like this central theme in my life was loss, and not just loss, but sudden loss and traumatic loss. And in that moment, all I could think of was my kids and how their lives were never going to be the same. But it was important to me as their mom that they have a good life and that I showed them that it's possible. He died, we didn't, and we had to keep going and living our lives, and that's what we've done.
You are so strong. I've heard you tell that story before, but every time it just gives me even more like motivation to share it and to move past any grief that I've had too.
Mhm.
And I think that well, I'm just going to go back to being 21 years old. That seems like very young to have to deal
Mhm.
with something like that, but the way that you were able to heal from that was in a way that was teaching other people and educating other people. And then once you got to age 43 with the loss of your husband, how did you feel like what was your journey like to healing in that, in that state of your life, in that season of life is like how I like to
Yeah, I think what was probably the most challenging at that point was, raising 2 children as a solo parent, but not just raising 2 children who were 10 and 13, but 2 children who were grieving, and each person grieves individually. It's not the same. And so knowing how to support them and navigate them while I was grieving, was difficult. We were not left in a good place financially, and that's part of my cautionary tale. My husband didn't have a will in place. He had work life insurance, so a $50,000 policy. He was a civil engineer. Um, and, I was teaching in the Shawnee Mission School District, a reading specialist, making like $43,000 a year, and faced with, okay, funeral costs and a mortgage that I couldn't afford. Days before the service, his celebration of life, I was in line at the Social Security office, waiting for it to open to get my death benefits started because there was no other way I was going to pay my bills. And so it just was, I'm sure I was in shock. I'm sure that helped me. But immediately I wasn't given the option of stopping. I had to figure out how to support my family, how to support them financially, emotionally. Less than a year after he passed, I started my master's degree online because I hadn't gotten my master's degree. He said all along, if it's to fulfill you or to make you feel like you're furthering your career, do it. If you're doing it for financial reasons, I'm just going to build my career and that will help our family. And I need you to take care of the kids. And so we had a very traditional marriage, I would say,
Mhm.
where I let him lead and I supported and was supplementary income to the family and took care of the kids so that he could travel and work and do what he needed to do for his career. That being said, probably 8 years before he passed, he was not keeping up with paying the bills, so I took that over. I was grateful that I at least had that knowledge, but yeah, life insurance, after it happened, probably 4 months after it happened, I got my trust set up. I have a revocable living trust. I set up life insurance. I got all of my affairs in order to protect my family.
How did you figure all of that out, to go from, I guess, being the mother of your children and being like there to support your kids to now kind of being mother and father both and also handling all the finances?
It was difficult. I mean, I knew how to be Doug's wife. I didn't know how to be Doug's widow. I knew how to be Faith and Ben's mom. I didn't know how to be their mom who was grieving and doing both, parenting roles. I had a great network of support. My kids grew up going to Brookwood Elementary, and that community was they were so great. I had a mom who took my son to school every day so that I could get to work, starting in 5th grade until his freshman year of high school, and said, "You know what? I'm going there anyway." I
That's when
had
you find out that you actually have to allow people to
You
help
do.
you.
Mhm.
When sometimes, I don't know, if you are headstrong like me, you
Yeah.
don't accept all of the help,
Yes.
that you start to lean on your village.
Well, and I remember always expressing gratitude, and their response was, "It's exactly what you would do for us. It's exactly what you would do." And they were amazing, and that helped. I had dads step up. One of the dads taught my son how to tie a tie at his freshman homecoming before we started our pictures. Like, he didn't know how to tie a tie. We YouTubed it. He did his best. And then the dad saw it and said, "Oh, yeah, let's work on this. Let me show you." So we were really blessed with a great community of support, and that helped. But no, being good cop, bad cop, all of those things, it's different than a divorce situation. I mean, you're not single parenting, you're solo parenting. You don't
Mhm.
have someone to bounce ideas off of. You don't have someone to support you when there need to be consequences. And you certainly don't have the financial support.
All the while, you're also grieving yourself.
Hmm.
So maybe I wanna take a step back just to kind of maybe define grief, because I feel like, I don't know, maybe grief is can be many shapes and forms, and everybody grieves in their lives just in
Yes.
different ways, and they're grieving different things.
Hmm.
So how would you describe grief, and maybe, you know, like how to identify it, or everybody grieves differently. You mentioned that about your son and your daughter. So then how do you work through that if you're grieving differently?
Um, you've got to find what works for you. I went to a class on parenting children who grieve that helped me a little bit, but you just have to respect where that person is at and meet them where they're at. Some people like to grieve privately. For me, it helped me to talk about it. I started a blog and wrote about my emotions early on, and that helped me to process it. That was some advice that was given to me by my counselor, my therapist, and it was great. It was a great way to purge my emotions, but also my kids just wanted to be like everyone else. So I was grieving publicly. They were
Mhm.
very private, and so, that made it difficult, I'm sure, for them that I was so open with my grief. Um, you know, Grief comes from everything. It can be the loss of a marriage, it can be the loss of a job. It doesn't have to just be from death. And everyone's going to experience those things in their lifetime. And I think that the more relationships you have, and I'm definitely a relationship builder, the more people you love in your life, the more you will lose. And so learning how to carry that grief. You face it, you feel it. If you don't feel it, you'll feel it later.
Mhm.
And
Push
learn,
it down, so
yeah,
don't push it down
don't
and
push it down. I mean, let the tears flow. They need to. A lot of times when I work with people, they'll apologize when they start to cry. And I'm like, do not apologize. That's part of it. Yes, you should cry. Yes, you should feel this because if you prevent yourself from feeling it, it's going to come back and get you later. So it's important to face it.
so a couple things that made me think of. First, I'm also a feeler, and I feel like I'm an oversharer when it comes to my own things. So I think that is probably the way that I grieve and process and heal. And my husband is very different. When like when we lost my father-in-law, I wanted to talk about it, but he didn't.
Hmm.
And so I think talking to you and understanding that everybody grieves differently is something that we all need to accept and value and help.
Hmm.
Like for me, I wanted him to talk through it, but
Hmm.
that's not how he wanted to process
No.
it. So it's
Yeah.
meeting people where they're at, and that was
Hmm.
something that I had to understand and
Yeah.
work through.
And sometimes it's just being next to them. quietly,
Mhm.
being there when they're ready to share and listening. It's going to be individual for each person and each loss. You may go through another loss in life differently than you did a previous one, but I just think that everything that I've learned from grief has helped me with losses that have happened since my husband has passed.
So do you feel like after the loss of your husband and growing through that, do you think that that was a different form of growth than after, like when you were 21 years old? Like
Mhm.
what are the differences and how do you feel like you've grown from those?
Well, I think the type of loss. I mean, I started a widow support group 2 years after my husband passed away, and that was invaluable to me to talk to other widows. You asked what I'm reading right now.
Mhm.
Well, there was a time my nightstand was just stacked with books about widows because I'm like, "I'm 43. I don't know anybody who's a widow. So I need to
Sorry, that's not
understand."
funny, but
No, but it's
but
true. I
yeah.
was like, "I need to understand that what I'm feeling is normal. I need to know that it's gonna be okay. I need something that gives me hope." So the books that I sought out were, Widows Wear Stilettos, the Mediocre Widow, the
Yeah.
Saturday Night Widows. Like, there's gotta be some humor, and we kinda call that our dark widow humor when my widow friends and I get together. We I one thing I did with that support group was Christmas. Oh my god, does that suck when your husband's dead?
Yeah.
And so we're like, "We've gotta do something. We've gotta start some new traditions." And so we went to the luminary tour, the widow group and I. And as we're walking up, one of them says, "Well, I'm glad Tim died because he never'd go to this with me. Now I finally get to go." And we all laughed and we're like, "Okay,
Is
but
that
we get to
yeah.
laugh because, yeah, I
Yeah.
mean, this is what it is." But having that network of women who truly get it was really invaluable to me. That's also why I do what I do. I see a therapist. I think anyone who's grieving needs to see a therapist. I think that's huge. But my own therapist looked at me once and said, "I have not lived your life. You are a grief expert because of what you've gone through." And being able to talk to someone who truly understands, she's like, "I have the education. I don't have your experiences." And that's what I found in those support groups, and I started a widow for young, I'm sorry, a support group for young widows in Kansas City just now. Right now, we're just doing it via Zoom, but I think we're going to try to grow it and meet monthly in person. And, young widows feel differently about their loss than, people that have gotten to be married for 40 years and then lose a spouse. So
Mhm.
that's even different. They're all widows, but it's a different experience. And so offering that to others and, that shared understanding is huge.
That is awesome. So what age is Young Widows? Is this
Right now, the youngest is 35. I'm thinking that I'll expand it from 25 to probably 50 when we start to grow. And yeah.
so do you like as part of your healing process, it sounds like for you,
Hmm.
it's educating and helping
Yes,
others.
it is.
And so, how can like just for our audience, if they're grieving or if they are trying to, or if they've experienced loss, like how do you suggest finding a healing process?
Well, I think it's important that, I mean, it's a decision you make, honestly. And I made the decision that I wanted our lives to still be good after loss. And so, seeking out resources. I was surprised in Kansas City that there weren't more resources available, which is why I started the support group for widows. The experience I had wasn't what I wanted. A lot of times there's a lot of sharing and there's a lot of emotion. The support group that I went to didn't feel like it had any forward momentum, and I needed something that would give me hope. And so my support group was about learning to feel the loss, talk about our loved ones, and still have hope for our future and keep living and having new experiences and finding joy. Joy is the name of my coaching because that's what got me through. I was before my husband passed away, my email was had joy in it. And my tagline was never let them steal your joy. And then he passed and I had to fill out all kinds of paperwork and do the widow errands, and they'd ask for my email, and I'm like,
You saw a
I'd
lot of
be
joy.
I'd be joyful. I'm like, I don't know, maybe that should change. And in my head and heart, I thought no, because that's who I'll be again. And so, very intentionally, every day from the beginning, I would stop and say, okay, what brought me joy today? And it was simple. It could be, oh, I saw a nice sunrise on my way to school today, or I had a good cup of coffee. I had a phone call from a friend. Like in the beginning, it was forcing myself to find a moment of joy each day in the darkness. And then they just started to come more naturally over time and as I healed.
So how did you I mean, do you have any suggestions for, like how to help kids experience what your kids experienced? I mean, I don't want you to share anything that you don't
Yeah.
want to share, but like if somebody does have children and they're in the spot where okay, they just lost their father or they just
hmm
lost their mother, how do I help my kids through that?
Um, that's a tough one. I'm actually working with a new nonprofit that's meant to bring grief education into schools. I think that sometimes schools are even unprepared for how to support families that have experienced a loss.
Mhm.
And it's meant to help children. So, like, I'm working on some mini lessons that are going to hopefully be given in the classroom so that grief is a topic that is already discussed and not a topic that's kind of the elephant in the room that people are afraid to talk about. So that it's a proactive approach to grief education versus reactive
Ugh, I love that.
once something happens.
That's so relatable. It's like your passion is, helping people find joy after loss,
Mhm,
and you're putting that in schools early on, early educating,
mhm,
early, like, proactive. And one of my passions is financial literacy, and I'm
mhm,
really trying to get more financial literacy in younger
mhm.
ages in the schools because I think it's important to know I mean, it's important to know both.
It is. It is important. Absolutely.
So if we're talking about someone that like, what types of clients do you work with?
So right now I've worked from ages probably 70, mostly widows, honestly. But I'm open to working with anyone who's experienced loss because my loss isn't strictly loss of spouse. I've lost my only sibling, I've lost friends. Um, and so I'm open to working with anyone that would like to somebody that's looking for hope, somebody that's looking for not just healing, but learning how to live life again after loss, I think is a good fit for me. And so the first thing that I offer is a free discovery call
Mhm.
because I think that just having a conversation honestly in the beginning about what your loss is, where you're at with your healing, what you're hoping for, um, working with me and then deciding if we're a fit. Because if someone is, I'm really good, and so far with the clients I've worked with, I seem to be really good at helping people get unstuck.
Mhm.
When people are stuck in their grief, I find a way to help them move forward. I
Oh.
have someone, grief and loss never goes away. It's going to be a part of your life forever. But the grief from the beginning it becomes lighter. I think of it like a backpack. And in the beginning, you're so weighted down with it and it's so heavy and just taking a step forward feels very labor intensive. And then as you start to heal, that backpack becomes lighter and you still have it with you. It's just not as heavy. So teaching people I think there's a misconception that you're going to get through grief. That you're going to
I was
um,
gonna actually
get
ask that
over
question,
grief,
like,
and you're
do you
not ever going to get through it or get over it. It becomes a part of you. It just is something you carry that becomes lighter once you've done the work.
I remember when I had a loss, I experienced a loss, and I thought that I was never going to be able to talk about it without crying,
Mhm.
and when I finally was able to tell my story and talk about it without crying, I was like, milestone number 1.
Yes.
This is like a huge moment for
Yes.
me.
Yes.
And it's like mini milestones that you're just kind of like you can talk about it, but you still like you feel it and
Mhm.
it's always there. And then I think you're to your point, like sharing memories and being able to, create some humor around it
Yes. Yes.
is kind of part of the journey.
It is. It is. And I know that we talked about my business and what I'm doing now and what I've overcome. But I do want to touch a little bit more on the financial side of loss, as far
Yes,
as
you read my
the
mind.
cautionary tale. I'm a Mariner client, and I've just started with you guys recently. But I had to learn so much after my husband died. Home repairs, different sort of financial things. And in the beginning, the widow brain is a real thing. Like you're having trouble remembering things, you're having trouble focusing, and yet you've got all of these decisions to make. And so the decision fatigue is real. Like I had a friend who we'd go to lunch and I'd be like, just tell me what to order. Like
Mhm.
I'm making all of the decisions. You don't have a partner to share those decisions with. And so finding someone you trust and a financial advisor to help guide you. I had a family friend who was an attorney who helped me with my
Your
revocable
trust.
living trust. I uh, just having people in those roles that you know that you can feel safe with and trust is really important. Um, I feel like this loss was transformative. I'm not the same person I was when I was Doug's wife. I'm different in a lot of ways, and I've learned so much through the process. But I would encourage all wives to not be in the place of just letting the husband take care of things and
Mhm.
make the decisions. And knowledge is power. And I think it's really important that you have things in place as far as a will and a plan, but also that you're informed, that you know the password to this, that, or the other,
Yes.
that you know where to find this information so that you're not left unprepared. I think, just having that knowledge and preparation is huge. And obviously, having adequate life insurance is so
Is
important.
I I wanna bring Jenny into all of my meetings with me as the
Yeah, yeah.
no, but I actually try to always bring in, if possible, the wife or the spouse
Hmm.
that's less interested in the financial piece of it, just to bring them both in to have everyone feel empowered
Hmm.
and understand where everything is. And
Yes.
also in the decision making, I think it's a joint decision in some of these choices that you have, whether it's, having a revocable trust, what kind of life insurance, who's going, like if you have little kids, who's going to have the guardianship of your
Hmm.
kids? That's very important. And it's kind of a tough, a tough choice to make if something
Hmm.
were to happen to one of you. But I think that all of these things that you had to figure out after the fact and grow from and learn and figure out where all of these accounts were or
Hmm.
how to even, where was his income coming from,
Hmm.
or if like social security was going to
Yeah.
help. Like all of these things are scary and overwhelming, and I feel like it probably was
Hmm.
hard.
We were on his health insurance.
Oh, like,
And so, he died July 10th of 2014, and by the end of July, our insurance was ending. So I tried to get onto the school district insurance, and a family policy was $1,400 a month, which was half of my take home pay
mm,
probably. And I was like, well, I can't do that.
yeah.
And so I even went to apply for Can Care for health insurance for my children because I could get an individual policy for no charge with my district, and learned with the college education, I made $400 a year too much to qualify. And that was very humbling to be in that place. And um, so went into the marketplace and got my kids' policies, which was, you're constantly having to change doctors because this insurance company pulls out, and did that for a few years. So yeah, there's just so much involved. And um, there's post traumatic stress, which I still have. I have a lot of
Mhm.
fear. My kids, when they were in high school, I'd hear sirens, they'd get a text, "You good?" And they're
Yeah,
like, "Yeah,
my mom still does
I'm
that.
still here. I'm at, my friend's house." So still have some of that, but I also feel like I had post-traumatic growth from this loss. It really changed who I am, and it was empowering. I had a dream after he passed one time, and I felt like I'm a believer in all of that, and it was very symbolic. And we were in a car and he was driving. He didn't say a word to me. He was driving, and we got to an intersection and he stopped the car and got out of the car and walked away from me. And I just remember, saying to him, I don't think this is a safe place to be. like in this intersection. And so I got out of the passenger seat, walked around to the driver's seat, got behind the wheel, and it was a windy, lots of different turns trying to find my way until I found a place where I felt safe to park. And I thought, okay, this means that I am in the driver's seat now. And my life and my kids' life, that's up to me. And good or bad, how this ends is up to me. There's no one else. And so I took the wheel, and I'm very proud to say I have a daughter who's graduated college now and teaches high school Spanish and coaches soccer at her old high school, which is super sweet. And a son who graduated in December and is doing an internship in accounting and is doing very well. And they've gone on to live happy lives. And in the moment when I got that call from the Overland Park Police, that's all I wanted. I wanted my kids to be happy, and I wanted them to be safe, and I feel like I've accomplished that, and that feels really good.
And that's a testament to you also is you retired, you were
I
in
did.
retirement, and then you founded your
Yeah,
own
I did.
company.
I did. Yes, I retired at 54 to be from, $43,000 a year and 50,000 in life insurance to be where I'm at. I'm feeling really proud of the efforts that I've made. I mean, I'm not a millionaire by any means, but I'm absolutely and my business is more about helping others. I'm not expecting to make a lot of money doing it. I just like to help people. And it's supplemental to my retirement. So,
Well, you have a gift. I know that. And I think that you have a gift of sharing and also helping people heal. This is a silly question, but is like, the stages of grief
mhm,
or denial. And do you
yeah.
think that that's really true? Did you go through the
Ugh.
stages?
Um, so many of those stages, in my opinion, from my experience, I feel like some of that's a little bit outdated because I think then people follow that guideline and think, oh, but I haven't hit this stage yet. Or there's like, well, but wait, this should be what comes next. What should happen is what you feel. And it's going to be different for every person. So to say the stages of grief, that's probably not how I address it when I work with people. I again meet them where they're at, and it's all about forward momentum and growth and healing. Right now, I had someone who was 3 years in and in her family home, surrounded by her husband's things and very stuck. And we worked together, and now she has sold the family home and bought her own space and, started pickleball lessons and, is living life. And that's what I want to see happen for my clients. I want to see them
Well, you're living
learn to
proof. That's
live.
probably why you're a gift to other people because you're living proof that you can get past a
Hmm.
stuckness.
Hmm.
Do you, another silly question, but I feel like this is a good,
Hmm.
just like, did you ever feel like, this isn't fair? Like, why is this happening to me? And
Hmm.
how do you move past that?
I think that's so counterintuitive to healing. If
Yes,
you find yourself in the what if place, you find yourself in the why me place, nothing is going to come from that. You can ask those questions and you can feel that it's unfair. That's natural. I did feel all of those things. Um, but it's not productive in your healing to ask those questions.
it doesn't do much.
Mm-mm, no.
Okay, so we've covered a lot. Is
Hmm.
it okay if I do a lightning round?
Yes.
Yeah.
That sounds really
Hell yes.
exciting. Sure. Lightning round.
Okay, so
Okay.
I have a handful of questions
Sure.
and we're going to just kind of answer as
Okay.
quickly as we can. Um, what was the best advice you've ever been given?
Um, I think that two things, my counselor telling me to write about my grief, which eventually I will publish, a book. I feel that that's part of my future, was really good for my healing. Um, and, you know, my daughter has given me a lot of great advice. She's very wise. And
Mm.
we were literally driving through like a rainstorm from my parents back to Kansas City. And it was terrifying. I was like white knuckling it, and she was in high school and in the passenger seat and very calmly looking at the weather bug app. And she's like, well, I think we're going to drive out of the red soon. And I'm like, okay. And then she's like, oh, it appears the red is following us. And I'm just like, and I was just ready to quit. And she said, just keep going. And it was symbolic in so many ways when she said, just keep going, Mom, you've got this. And so those two pieces of advice were very valuable to me.
I also did you coin the term post-traumatic growth? Because I feel like
I
that is
did not.
well, it's
I'm
a
sure I read it.
fantastic
I'm sure I
phrase.
read it in one of my widow books, but I definitely feel that I've experienced that.
I do too.
Yeah.
Okay, what's the worst piece of advice you've been given?
Well, I'm going to tell anyone who speaks to someone who's experienced loss to never say, well, at least you got that kind of love in your life. Or
Everything happens for a
everything
reason.
happens for a reason.
I
Please
remember you
don't.
telling
Yeah,
me that
please,
that is not your
please don't say those things. It's not helpful. And,
it's a
and
point of advice.
he's in a better place. No,
Oh,
like being with me would be great.
yeah.
Like, how is that better?
Big,
So those types of things. And I think people are afraid to talk about grief because they're afraid to say the wrong thing. So saying that, there are a lot of people that will avoid people who are grieving. It's important that you don't do that either. So it's a balance. I have advice about what not to say, but not saying anything, and let the people talk about their person as much as they want to and say their name, and you share memories. Like, we want to know that that person's not forgotten.
oh, that's great advice.
Mhm.
To my question of worst advice. No. What is okay, if you could eat one thing for the rest of your life, what would it be?
Well, I just read a report
Oh,
that drinking red wine and eating cheese and chocolate extends your life expectancy.
I'm all
I'm on
all
board for all three of
yeah,
those.
me too.
Yeah,
I love it. So we're gonna eat chocolate and cheese
cheese
and
and red
drink
wine.
wine. Yes.
Yeah.
Okay, what is your superpower?
I kind of got that question in advance, and I was thinking about it last night. So I asked some people around me what they thought, like
That's a good exercise to go
some of
through.
my best friends, and my first friend said loyalty, like you're
Mm,
fiercely loyal. Um, let's see, my daughter said it was either optimism or resilience. My son said empathy, and what's the other one? Oh, Michael said kindness. And so I think kind of all of those things, I think being able to find light in the dark is probably my superpower, but I like what they said too.
yeah, I think that sounds like you're superhuman. Okay, I wanted to ask this one question before we close.
Sure.
What would you say to someone who is in the thick of grief right now?
I think I would use the words keep going. And it really does get better. It does. It will.
This has been a fantastic conversation, Jenny. Thank you for joining us.
Well, thank you for having me. I really appreciate it. I hope that it helps.
I think that your story is, again, transformational. So I think it's very motivating for other people that are experiencing loss. So,
Excellent. And I hope that if anybody needs grief coaching, that they'll look me up. So,
and
um,
yeah, please share where people
yeah.
can find you.
So I have a website. It's grieftojoycoaching.com. Very simple. It tells my story. It's got a place where you can contact me. And again, we can start with that free discovery call and kind of go from there and see if we're a fit. But I know that, and this is what I'm feeling and experiencing already with my clients, you'll feel better after talking to me. And each time we talk, you'll feel a little bit better. And let's just start so that you can feel better.
I always feel better after talking to you. So thank you. And thanks to the audience for listening or watching. If you did enjoy this episode and what you heard from Jenny and myself, please like, subscribe, or follow wherever you get your podcasts. And we hope you have a great rest of your week.
Thank you.
The views expressed in this podcast are for informational and educational purposes only and do not consider any individual, personal, financial, legal, or tax situation. As such, the information contained herein intended and should not be construed as a specific recommendation, individualized tax, legal, or investment advice. Where specific advice is necessary or appropriate, individuals should contact their own professional tax and investment advisors or other professionals regarding their specific circumstances and needs prior to taking any action based upon this information. The information provided has been obtained from sources deemed reliable. However, the accuracy, completeness, and reliability cannot be guaranteed. Tax laws are subject to change, either prospectively or retroactively. Any opinions expressed are subject to change at any time without notice. There is no assurance assurance that any investment, plan, or strategy will be successful. Investing involves risk, including the possible loss of principal. Past performance is no guarantee of future results, and any opinion expressed herein should not be viewed as an indicator of future performance. Mariner is the marketing name for the financial services business of Mariner Wealth Advisors, LLC, and its subsidiaries. Investment advisory services are provided through the brands Mariner Wealth, Mariner Independent, Mariner Institutional, Mariner Ultra, and Mariner Workplace, each of which is a business name of the registered investment advisory entities of Mariner. For additional information about each of the registered investment advisory entities of Mariner, including fees and services, please contact Mariner or refer to each entity's Form ADV Part 2A, which is available on the Investment Advisor Public Disclosure website, www.advisorinfo.sec.gov. Registration of an investment advisor does not imply a certain level of skill or training.